Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the early hours of a cold November morning, the city of Brookhaven lay shrouded in a heavy fog. The street lamps cast a muted glow, illuminating the damp pavement, where only the occasional car would disturb the eerie silence. The air was thick with the scent of rain-soaked earth, and a chill ran through the alleys as if even the shadows feared the light. Detective Sarah Ellison had been on the force for over a decade, her experience etched into the lines on her face. Today was different, though. Her morning coffee lukewarm in her hand as she stared at the file in front of her. The case file read Megan Hollister, a name that would soon be etched into her memory forever. At precisely 16 a.m., a call had come in from the Northern Park, an area that had seen better days. Passing joggers had stumbled upon a scene that would haunt them for a lifetime. Megan, a 22-year-old nursing student, lifeless in the dewy grass. Initial reports suggested no weapon was found on the scene, and as the details trickled in, they painted a troubling picture of violence. Sarah pulled on her worn leather jacket and made her way to the scene. The world outside her office felt strangely distant as the sobering realities of the job beckoned. She parked her car near the entrance of the park, stepping into the sterile morning fog. The muffled sounds of crime scene tape being stretched and hushed conversations from uniformed officers met her ears. There was a certain unwelcoming heaviness in the air, as if the park itself held its breath, waiting for answers that were, as of now, elusive. Sarah took a deep breath and approached the small crowd, her intuition screaming that this wasn't just another case. The victim, Megan Hollister, was not just another name on an investigator's list. She was a beacon of hope and ambition to those who knew her. Friends had often described her laughter as infectious, capable of brightening even the dullest of days. Among the worn-out textbooks and coffee-stained notes of her one-bedroom apartment, aspirations of becoming a nurse fueled her determination. She participated in volunteer clinics, where her genuine compassion earned her a reputation among peers and patients alike. As Sarah walked toward the gathering at the scene, snippets of conversations flitted through the air. A police officer held up a photo of Megan for onlookers, her wide smile captured during a summer barbecue celebrating life among friends, oblivious to the fate that awaited her barely a few months later. Investigators had already begun piecing together her last known movements. Official reports indicated that Megan had attended a party the night before with classmates. It seemed innocent enough a chance to unwind amid the stress of exam. The tragic irony hung heavy over Sarah as she examined the crime scene, where laughter had once echoed, now replaced by the chilling silence of impending investigations. The forensic team combed through the area, gathering evidence that would unlock the harrowing details of Megan's final moments. A lone flower lay near her body, seemingly misplaced in the chaos. Yet it told its own story, perhaps, a gesture of love or a final goodbye. Nearby, a young woman with tear-streaked cheeks pushed her way through the crowd. Sarah recognized her instantly. Emma, Megan's closest friend. The two had been inseparable since childhood, sharing laughter, dreams, countless secrets. Sarah approached her cautiously, knowing the words she was about to utter could address a wound too deep for immediate healing. "Emma, I'm Detective Ellison. Can you tell me about Megan?" Emma's response was a quivering lament that echoed through the fog, cementing the reality of their loss. This was no longer just a case to unravel. It was a collective grief festering within the community. A solemn reminder that the darkness of humanity can touch even the brightest of souls. The crime scene. Sarah stepped carefully past the yellow crime scene tape, her heart heavy as she immersed herself in the details surrounding Megan's last moments. Nearby, the ground was still soft from the night's rain, the blades of grass glistening like emeralds under the pale morning light. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, a stark contrast to the life that had once flourished here. Megan's body lay sprawled at the base of a gnarled oak tree, its limbs twisted as if trying to shield her from the horror that had unfolded. The forensic team worked methodically around her, their expressions grim as they collected evidence. A glint of something sparkling caught Sarah's eye. Megan's silver necklace had been partially buried in the fallen leaves. The pendant shaped like a heartbeat, a cruel symbol of the life that had abruptly ended. Doctor's initial assessment indicates blunt force trauma to the head. A uniformed officer informed Sarah, his voice low and steady, yet laced with a gravity that echoed in the stillness of the park. No signs of struggle, but her phone is missing. Sarah nodded, the pulse of her professional instinct sharpening. A missing phone could suggest a deeper story. Was this a robbery gone wrong or something far more sinister? She examined the area, taking note of discarded beer cans and remnants of the party that had wrapped up hours before. The juxtaposition of youth and violence weighed heavily on her mind. As the forensic team lifted Megan's body to transport it for autopsy, a sharp gasp erupted from the cluster of friends gathered nearby. Emma had caught a glimpse of the tragedy unfolding, her eyes wide with disbelief. Sarah approached her again, offering a comforting hand. "I need you to stay strong, Emma. We'll find out what happened." The young woman blinked back tears, gathering her resolve painfully. She was the happiest we'd ever seen her. She was talking about her future, how much she wanted to help people. She had plans that were now extinguished, like the faint light of dawn as they all braced for the darkness ahead. Sarah resolved to dig deeper into Megan's life, knowing that the answers lay not just in the evidence but in the hearts of those who loved her. The crime scene, once a place of laughter, had now morphed into a landscape of sorrow and urgency, urging Sarah to seek justice for Megan, who had so much more left to give. The early investigation. As the morning turned to noon, the calm in the park shifted abruptly. Detective Sarah Ellison knew the initial hours post-discovery were critical, a window of opportunity that could either make or break the case. She stood in the dim light of the precinct, surrounded by a bevy of officers and detectives, each taking on the task with a sense of urgency that matched Sarah's own. "Gather everything you can from the party last night," she directed, her voice steady but resolute. "Interviews with attendees, surveillance footage from local businesses. Anything that suggests a timeline leading up to her death." The detectives in the room nodded, fanning out into various units to tackle the task diligently. Meanwhile, Sarah's mind raced as she recalled Emma's words. Megan had spoken about her dreams of becoming a nurse, her desire to help, and the principles she stood for among them: trust and loyalty. Who would shatter that idyllic world? The sun's rays struggled to pierce the clouds hanging low, creating an atmosphere thick with palpable tension. Sarah envisioned the barely veiled grief etched on her friends' faces, the chilling idea that one of them might have seen something anything would not leave her mind. Soon, the first report of leads began to flow in. A nearby diner, the corner stop, had cameras positioned to capture the street outside and was eager to cooperate. Caffeine and bacon grease infused the air as Sarah and her partner, Detective Malik Wright, sat down to review the footage from the night of the party. With each frame, they examined the ebb and flow of patrons, searching for any signs of Megan or anyone lingering too long in the shadows. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught Malik's eye. A man in a dark hoodie, standing just beyond the reach of the diner's neon glow, his face obscured by the angled camera. "That's him," Malik murmured, zooming in. He appeared right around the time Megan left. Sarah glanced at the timestamp, a knot forming in her stomach. There was something disconcerting in the way the figure loitered, almost a Tinga predator concealed amid the unsuspecting crowd. A photograph was snapped from the screen. This fleeting image would be their first tangible lead. Back at the precinct, with clues now beginning to form a picture of the night's events, Sarah fought against the creeping sense of dread. This was just the start, but in her heart, she feared what unwrapped truths awaited them in the shadows. Each moment brought them closer to answers, but also deeper into a web of implications that they were yet to understand. The pursuit of justice for Megan Hollister had only just begun. The dead ends. 3 days into the investigation, Sarah sat in the dim light of her office, a sea of case notes and photographs strewn across her desk. The image of the hooded figure hung above her, yet every avenue explored had turned cold. Despite their best efforts, few leads had materialized, and the tragic weight of uncertainty settled heavily in the air. Emma had been cooperative throughout the ordeal. She had shared Megan's social media accounts, provided contact information for party guests, and even agreed to speak with a counselor to help process the loss. But the more Sarah dug, the more it felt like the threads of Megan's life were being pulled too tightly, revealing nothing but dead ends. One by one, the friends who attended the party began coming in for interviews, their statements seemingly harmless but frustratingly vague. Most echoed a repetitive mantra: Megan was the life of the party, spirited and carefree. Yet no one had seen any trouble. No one spotted that ominous figure that had lingered just beyond the diner's light. Everyone seemed the same story, Sarah remarked to Malik, who was busy constructing a timeline on the whiteboard. It's as if they're afraid of something. Malik glanced up, rubbing the bridge of his nose in exasperation. Or protecting someone. The timing of the call to 911 is suspicious too, reported over an hour after Megan was last seen. It doesn't add up? Sarah leaned back in her chair, the wood creaking beneath her weight. What if they know more than they're letting on? Those friendships run deep. Maybe they're scared of losing each other if they point fingers. The realization coursed through her like cold water. Trust could easily breed complicity. She turned back to the pile of notes, searching for any inconsistencies, wondering if perhaps someone had unwittingly shielded a murderer in their midst. The intricate dance of loyalty and betrayal swept through her thoughts like a storm gathering strength. Feeling suffocated by the absence of progress, Sarah and Malik decided to revisit the diner, hoping for another look at grainy security footage that may hold clues unnoticed before. She knew they needed a new approach, a fresh set of eyes to further scrutinize the timeline of that fateful night. As they arrived, a feeling of foreboding settled in her chest. The testimony she hoped would lead them forward seemed to shift with each step backward. With every dead end, Megan's ghost felt heavier, her laughter echoing in the empty hallways of investigations. Sarah could sense time slipping through their fingers, prompting a somber realization. They might be racing against an unseen clock, keeping secrets hidden just out of reach. A break in the case. The incessant ringing of the phone jolted Sarah from her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. It was late evening, and the precinct had quieted down. The 9-5 bustled dissipating into an atmosphere of exhaustion. She glanced at the screen. Detective Malik's name flashed before her, and she answered with muted anticipation. "You need to get down to the diner now." Malik's voice crackled through the receiver, urgency woven into every syllable. "Don't ask questions, just come." Heart racing. Sarah quickly grabbed her jacket, her mind racing with possibilities. Had someone come forward? Or had they finally identified the figure from the footage? Within minutes, she arrived at the corner stop, where Malik stood outside, his face lit by the intermittent flickering of the neon sign. "What happened?" She pressed, her breath leaving her in a hurry. "Owner got a call from a regular customer," Malik explained, leading her inside. He recognized the hoodie. Said he saw that same guy lurking around the diner several times before, usually chatting with a group of kids near the park entrance. As they settled into a corner booth, the owner joined them, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a heavy accent. "I remember that kid," he said, running a hand through thinning hair. "Always hanging out. Well, something off. But there was something off. A few nights ago, he got into a quarrel with some of the students. Never seen him since then." "Do you have video footage from that night?" Sarah asked, her notepad at the ready. "Sure do," he replied, leading them toward a back room where the tapes were stored. "We keep everything. Let's see if this kid shows up." As the footage played, Sarah felt the tension in her gut tighten. The screen revealed a chaotic scene, students laughing, grabbing food, but as they began to filter out, a figure stood lurking, half visible under the orange glow of the streetlight. Just as Malik pointed to the screen, Sarah glimpsed the unmistakable silver of a necklace on the figure's neck. "That's Megan's necklace," she exclaimed, almost breathless with disbelief. "That has to be him." Malik grabbed his phone, frantically taking snapshots of the screen as Sarah's mind whirled. They needed to track down this kid before he could slip away into the night like a ghost. The young man's name would emerge shortly after, a flicker of familiarity igniting recognition, someone whose life connected to Megan's in ways that were yet to be unveiled. With renewed vigor, they raced back to the precinct. This break in the case opened a floodgate of possibilities. What would they discover if they could finally bring the looming figure into focus? Just as the shadows of despair began to lift, the clock continued ticking, and Sarah was determined to unveil the truth no matter the cost. The suspect. By dawn, the precinct was abuzz with the energy of the night shift winding down, while the morning crew clocked in, each detective trading tales of their sleepless nights. But for Sarah, her focus rested solely on the emerging figure from the diner. Footage. Lucas Jensen now dominated her notes, a thread that needed to be pulled tight to unravel the mystery of Megan's tragic end. Lucas was a local college dropout known for his erratic behavior. He had a history of petty offenses, trespassing, and a couple of minor drug charges, but nothing that truly indicated how twisted fate could be. Yet every interaction indicated a darkness lurking just beneath the surface. Sarah pushed the frustration from her mind and followed the momentum of urgency. Days of dead ends had come to a shuddering halt, And now, the chase was on. "Get the word out to the patrols," she instructed Malik, who met her at her desk. "Lucas needs to be picked up and brought in for questioning." Within an hour, the patrol officers located him at a rundown apartment complex, just a few blocks from the park. As they did, Sarah and Malik gathered in an interrogation room, a sterile space, hyperlit with flickering fluorescent lights. The waiting felt agonizing. White and heavy in the air. When Lucas finally entered the room, he shuffled and hunched over, wearing the same hoodie from the footage. They hadn't been wrong about that. The nervousness cracked like an egg at edges of his demeanor. His hands fidgeted, and his eyes darted in all directions except toward Sarah and Malik. "Lucas," Sarah began, keeping her tone steady but firm, "we have questions about Megan Hollister's death. We saw you near the diner the night she went missing." His eyes widened momentarily before dropping to the table. He mumbled, voice barely above a whisper. "I was just there." "But you were there," Malik pressed, leaning closer, peering over the edge of the table as if attempting to bear down any hidden confession nested in that distracted mind. "You were watching her." Lucas shook his head, the hood slipping back from his forehead, revealing a collection of faded tattoos that marked his skin, remnants of choices made from a past better left behind. "Well, I didn't hurt her," he insisted. Yet something in his tone echoed with uncertainty. Was it guilt or fear? As Sarah peppered him with questions, digging for any semblance of motive, Lucas's facade began to unravel. Each inquiry unpeeled layers of a chaotic life, revealing a history muddled with obsession, his desire for acceptance, his envious feelings toward Megan's ambition, her laughter, her dreams. The more he spoke, the more shadows revealed themselves, forming glimpses of fractured jealousy twisted into anger. Why not just talk to her? Sarah probed, her determination anchoring her voice. "Why wait until the party? What happened that night?" At his moment of silence, Sarah sensed the precipice of a confession. It was there, nestled in the fear radiating from his skin. But just as she thought he might break, a loud knock at the door interrupted their cross-examination. Something had shifted in Lucas. He recoiled, his eyes darting toward the door as if sensing that clarity was slipping away. Moments later, a squad officer entered with an update. The forensic team had identified latent prints on Megan's missing phone. Those prints belonged to Lucas Jensen. The puzzle pieces were beginning to fit. But as they pressed harder, Sarah felt another chill settle into the room. Lucas wasn't just a potential suspect anymore. He was at the very nexus of a web unraveling before them. The hunt for truth had taken a turn into a darker abyss, and Sarah was determined to follow it to its chilling end. The trial. Had passed since the dreadful morning in November when Megan Hollister was found. But the scars of her absence had not begun to heal. The air in the courthouse was thick with tension and solemnity as family, friends, and a gathering of spectators awaited the trial of Lucas Jensen. Each face in the audience reflected a shared grief, a longing for justice that had become a distant promise during the excruciating wait for this day. As the proceedings began and the judge took her seat, Sarah sat at the back of the courtroom, her heart racing as the reality of the moment washed over her. The case, once awash in uncertainties, now stood naked before the court, laid out point-by-point tapes, interviews, and forensic evidence woven together into an unrelenting narrative. The prosecution's case encapsulated the chilling events leading up to Megan's death. They portrayed Lucas as a misguided figure consumed by jealous Asumion, who couldn't cope with rejection and ultimately turned to violence. The clips of security footage played back repeatedly, illustrating the moments Lucas had loitered close to Megan, circling her life like a vulture waiting to descend. Lucas Jensen cannot be allowed to walk free, the prosecutor argued emphatically, pacing the courtroom with a conviction that reverberated through the stone wall. His fingerprints were found on the victim's phone, and he was captured in the act of stalking her, leading directly to the moment her life was tragically cut short. Sarah watched as Lucas sat motionless at the defense table, a stark contrast to the vibrant, carefree college student who had once roamed the campus. The defense, however, painted a different picture aimed at deflecting blame. They presented Lucas as a troubled young man, manipulated by peers and society, suggesting that baseline mental health issues had driven him to a breakdown. They aimed to dissolve the straightforward interpretation of guilt into a smear of ambiguity. For Sarah, the inconsistencies in Lucas's statements loomed large, and as witnesses took the stand from friends who had known Lucas to the forensics, came the thread of his narrative unraveled piece by piece. Emma testified, recounting her last conversations with Megan, the dreams, aspirations, and the light of her laughter that would never be heard again. Lucas was always around. Emma's voice trembled as she spoke, reliving the memories with anguish. He wasn't a friend. He was an outsider who never really belonged. It scared us all. With each testimony, a collective breath suffocated the courtroom, and Sarah could feel the weight of Megan's absence pressing down on all involved. Laughter turned to hushed whispers as the prosecution painted a harrowing picture of the final moments Megan had lived through the timeline presented. It felt as though she was there again, her light snuffed out in the darkness of betrayal. Finally, it came time for Lucas to take the stand. As he shifted uncomfortably, Sarah's heart pounded. Would he confess, or would he cling to the threadbare excuses offered by his defense? Each word that dripped from his lips was met with scrutinizing silence, the courtroom hanging on every syllable as he distanced himself from the crime he had committed. The legacy of Megan's life, now intertwined with the heavy burden of his truth. As the trial drew to a close and the jury began deliberations, an air of uncertainty mingled with hope wafted throughout the room. Sarah held tight to the notion that justice would prevail, but the ache in her heart remained. And regardless of the outcome, nothing could bring Megan back. Yet, standing against the abyss of silence was the potential for closure. For the light of truth to shine a new flicker of justice rising from the depths of grief. The verdict would soon determine whether recognition of Megan's life would echo beyond these walls, or if another shadow would dwell in Brookhaven, leaving scars yet to heal. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial's conclusion, the verdict hung in the air like heavy fog, refusing to dissipate. The jury had found Lucas Jensen guilty of second-degree murder, the gavel's sound echoing like a distant thunderclap. While the courtroom had erupted into a mixture of relief and sorrow, the reality of the situation settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders. Justice had been served, but the memory of Megan Hollister would forever linger like a specter. As the sun rose one quiet Sunday morning, Sarah found herself drawn to Northern Park, the site where everything had unfolded. She had avoided it since Megan's death, but now she sought to reclaim the space away to confront the torrent of memories that washed over her like waves crashing against the shore. The park felt alive again, the trees breathing with life and laughter from families who would gather on weekends, oblivious to the darkness that had once tainted it. Walking along the path, Sarah paused beneath the gnarled oak tree, its branches extending like arms ready to embrace the world. This was where Megan had taken her last breath, and here Sarah could feel the weight of sorrow matched by the hope for healing. The forensic team had removed the remnants of violence, yet they could not erase the emotional scars embedded in the collective memory of the community. In an effort to honor Megan, Sarah teamed up with Emma, who had become an unwavering advocate for violence awareness and prevention. Together, they organized candlelight vigils at the park, gathering friends, family, and community members to celebrate the life that had been abruptly cut short. Each flame flickered with a purpose, brightening the darkness and illuminating memories of laughter, dreams, and shared moments that defined who Megan was: a caring daughter, a devoted friend, and an ambitious student. The vigils became a sanctuary for grieving hearts, a space for people to share stories that interwove the fabric of Megan's life, reminding all who gathered that beneath the shards of pain, love still thrived. As each story was told, Sarah felt the community's bond grow stronger, a collective resolve to ensure that no other family would endure this grief. Yet, amidst these moments of unity, Sarah often battled her own tumultuous thoughts. The questions that would never be answered echoed relentlessly. What if someone had intervened sooner? Could a conversation, a sign, have changed the course of that night? Those thoughts haunted her like shadows as she sought to find healing in a world now stained with loss. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah carved out time to examine herself within the narrative a detective navigating the aftermath. Her own heart, a kaleidoscope of emotions fueled by a relentless spirit for justice. The scars would remain, but in their wake, a passion ignited within her, not just for solving cases, but for touching lives, advocating for the voiceless, ensuring that their stories didn't fade into oblivion. As the seasons shifted from winter to spring, the flowers began to bloom, and life continued to unfold in Brookhaven. Sarah knew the fight wasn't over. Her job extended beyond the badge she wore. She vowed to keep Megan's spirit alive, turning tragedy into advocacy, transforming grief into purpose. The quest for justice would forever be intertwined with the pain of memories. But amidst it all, there was a growing strength, a promise to stand up for those whose voices had been stolen, to illuminate the path toward healing, and to never forget the vibrancy of a life once lived. Reflection. As Sarah watched the first blossoms appear in Northern Park, she often found herself lost in moments of reflection. The sun-dappled grass seemed to whisper stories of resilience, tugging her into the soft embrace of memories, both sweet and sorrowful. Each flower that broke through the thawing earth each flower that broke through thawing earth. Yet, within this fragile beauty, she felt the lingering ache of what would forever remain absent, the laughter and dreams of a young woman whose life had been stolen too soon. On quiet evenings, Sarah would sit on her back porch, a cup of herbal tea cradled in her hands, contemplating how the events surrounding Megan had reshaped her view of her work. The night spent poring over case files, interviewing witnesses, and navigating the painful labyrinth of loss had etched deep lines of introspection into her soul. She understood now that being a detective was more than solving crimes. It was about recognizing the humanity tethered to every name on a piece of paper. In the stillness, Sarah began to embrace the idea that the scars drawn from loss could also be a source of strength. She had witnessed the incredible power of community, unwavering support that emerged in the aftermath of tragedy. Collective heartbeat echoed in her ears, urging her to fight for those without a voice and to honor the light that flickered where darkness had lurked. With her pen poised over the pages of a new case to herself, she would cherish every moment, stand tall in the pursuit of justice, and ensure that no life would be reduced to mere statistics. Megan's story, once marred by violence, would now serve as a guiding light, a testament to resilience, a beacon for those lost, and an unwavering reminder of the importance of compassion. As dawn broke into another day, Sarah carried with her the wisdom of reflection, a commitment to do justice for every nameless victim whose truth cried out for recognition. Life, while fragile, was forever entwined with the stories that emerged from its fracture.